Today we are going to talk about sharps and flats, also known as accidentals, but they are by no means on accident. Not only are we going to talk about what sharps and flats are, but we're going to find them on our guitar. Learning the musical alphabet and where those notes are on your guitar is the foundation to anything else that is going to come in music theory. So, grab your guitar and let's get started. In our last lesson, we talked about the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we used whole steps and half steps to help us find each note up and down the guitar neck. For example, let's look at our A string. Also, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch lesson 1 before starting today's lesson. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now, what we did not talk about was what we call the notes that fall in between some of those letters. So, for example, if we look at the note C and D, well, we actually had to skip over a fret to get from C to D. Now, what do we call that note that lies on the 4th fret? Well, now we need to talk about sharps and flats. Let's hop over to the whiteboard. Let's start by taking a look at the first note in our musical alphabet, A. If we take A and we raise it in pitch by 1/2 step or by 1 fret on the guitar, it then becomes A sharp. Okay, now what happens if we go the other direction? If we take A and we lower it in pitch by 1/2 step or by 1 fret on the guitar, it becomes A flat. Okay, pretty easy. What I have drawn here is our A string on the guitar. So we have our string and we have all of our frets. Now that we know what sharps and flats are, let's fill in the gaps. If we take our note A, like we talked about before, and raise it by 1 fret or 1/2 step, it's going to become A sharp. This note between A and B is A sharp. Let's keep going along with using sharps to fill in those gaps. So here's another gap between C and D. So if we take C and raise it by a 1/2 step or 1 fret, it becomes C sharp. And then we go from D and we raise that by a 1/2 step, D sharp. Here's another one. If we take F and raise it by a 1/2 step or 1 fret, it is F sharp. And lastly, we have G to G sharp. Now, we can also fill in these gaps using flats instead of sharps. If we take A and drop it down a 1/2 step, it becomes A flat. G down a 1/2 step becomes G flat. E down a 1/2 step becomes E flat. D becomes D flat. And B becomes B flat. Now, this is a spot where some people can get confused. If we look at the notes C and D, we know that there is a whole step between these notes. We have a gap in between these notes. Now, depending on where you're coming from, we can either have a sharp or a flat in between these notes. If we start at D and we come down a 1/2 step, this note is then going to be D flat. But if we're coming from the note C, we need to go up a 1/2 step, so it would be C sharp. C sharp and D flat are going to sound the exact same. They're going to play the exact same on the guitar. The only difference is the name. Now let's look at something else. How about the notes B and C? As we know, these notes are right next to each other or just a half step away. So there is no gap in between. But sometimes you can still see notes like B sharp, or we could see C flat. So B sharp is going to sound the exact same as C. C flat is going to sound the same as the note B. If we look at our other pair of notes that are right next to each other, E and F, we can have a similar thing happen. We could see E sharp instead of F. We could also see F flat instead of E. Now, it's definitely less common to see things like F flat versus E, but it can happen. Now, one more thing that you could see is double flats. If we take a look again at the note A, if we go down by 1/2 step, it becomes A flat. Well, if we go one more half step, it becomes A double flat. A double flat is going to be the same as the note G. And again, you're not going to see this very often. But if it does happen, just start at A and go down 1/2 step to A flat, one more to A double flat. The same thing could happen with sharps. We could have B, and if we raise it by 1/2 step, B sharp, and if we raise it another half step, B double sharp. I just want to point out that normally double sharp is written out like this before the letter or the note on the staff. I'm just writing it out like this for the ease of explaining things as adding 2 half steps. Let's just take a minute to find a few notes on our guitar. How about A sharp? Let's find that on our low sounding E string. First thing I want to do is find the note A for reference. E, F, G, A. So we have A right here on the 5th fret. To make it sharp, we just raise it by a half step. So A sharp on our E string is on the 6th fret. Let's do another one. How about C sharp on our A string? So let's start by finding C on our A string. A, B, C. And now to make it sharp, we raise it a half step. So C sharp is on the 4th fret of our A string. Now let's do a flat. How about D flat on the G string? First thing we want to do is find the note D. G, A, B, C, D. D's on our 7th fret. And to make it flat, we just drop down 1 fret to the 6th fret. Let's do one more. How about E flat on the B string? Start by finding E, B, C, D, E. So E is on our 5th fret. We're going to drop it down by 1/2 step to E flat, which is on our 4th fret of the B string. All right, so before you move on any further with music theory, we really want to be sure that you're confident finding all your notes on all the different strings, whether it be sharp or flat. This is going to be really fundamental to anything else that you learn in the future. These single notes can eventually lead to scales, which can lead to improvising and soloing. These single notes can also lead to building chords, which are going to make writing music and learning songs so much easier. Maybe most importantly, it's going to make it easier for you to communicate with other musicians. So, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And please let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If you were having trouble with this lesson and you need to start again at lesson 1, there's no problem. Again, please take your time with this. It's really going to make your life easier in the future. That's all I got for today. Till next time.